So Kisstafer lost that last game, which means he has to pick another deck. Also, this brings apDrop to match point. If apDrop wins this next game, he moves on to the finals, and Kisstafer is unfortunately out. But Kisstafer looks like he's going to be moving to his warrior deck, which
his final deck.
Taking a look at this warrior deck, it looks like the old Alexstrasza Gorhal OTK.
Well, this warrior deck right here was actually very popular right before the big nerf that just happened to warriors, where basically Blizzard wanted to get rid of the one-turn kill kind of play. They don't seem to mind the chip away at you with you know, the hunter rush stuff or the paladin rush stuff. They seem to be okay with that, but they don't want you to suddenly die from a position of full health and nothing on the board. Now this particular OTK deck, it's not 100% OTK. What this deck is it has that OTK combo in there, but it also has some very strong cards to kind of manage the board in other ways that it can kill you by just kind of overwhelming you with very powerful creatures and removing all of your creatures early in the game. So if you notice, it has no Arcanite Reapers. Just forget the Arcanite Reaper completely. Just going to rely on Fiery War Axes for early board clears. Cleaves, Executes, Inner Rage, Wild Pyro, all those kind of cards to basically ensure that the board will be clear by the time this deck gets to, say, turn 5 or 6.
You even got a Brawl in there, just one of them.
Yeah, just one Brawl. Generally, this deck runs one Brawl. And you notice there's another play that can be made with Brawl here, where you have Sylvanas and Brawl. And you can actually play both in the same turn because this is pre-nerf Sylvanas. This is basically what it is a Brawl you cannot lose. You throw Sylvanas out there, and then you Brawl. So even if Sylvanas isn't the one that wins the Brawl, Sylvanas then dies, and you take whatever did win the Brawl. So it's actually a very powerful play. It's also got Black Knight, Cairn, you know, Alexstrasza, Gorhal, and Charge is the OTK that we talked about. But you're going to see, you know, the power of the Twilight Drake and the Cairn and stuff is where this deck is kind of going to dominate the mid to late game if it gets there in a good situation. So it's a tough deck to play. It's very, very difficult to play. There's a lot of choices to be made and a lot of hard clears. One thing that you don't see in this deck that you usually see is Whirlwinds, which is not in this deck.
Right.
The Whirlwind plus Pyromancer or Whirlwind plus Bloodmage Thalnos is very, very powerful. So we don't see that in this deck, and we'll see if that pays off or not. He's got the Acolytes in there, which is very good when you can play a Pyromancer in a spell. So this is a powerful deck, and I think this is a decent matchup for Kisstafer if he can get through the mid or through the early game and into the mid game with some sort of semblance of board control. He'll be fine.
Yeah. So let's do it. Let's move into Game 6 between apDrop and Kisstafer. Let's see if apDrop can just take Kisstafer out and move on to the finals, or if Kisstafer can bring this to the final Game 7.
Either way, this has been an incredibly exciting match between these two. Tons and tons of back and forth, and you can see why both of these players are extremely successful players of Hearthstone.
Yep.
They do not make a lot of mistakes.
Kisstafer going to go ahead and mulligan the Twilight Drake, the Brawl, and it looks like he was thinking about Sylvanas, but he opts to keep Sylvanas.
Which is an interesting call here, and other thing that was interesting was apDrop mulligan to Backstab. And that, I think, is because he's familiar with this deck and familiar with the fact that Kisstafer is not going to play any creatures with less than 3 health. Ever. Really. This deck doesn't have the Novices. This deck has the Acolyte of Pain, so Backstab is essentially a useless card against this deck.
apDrop ends up getting it anyway on his next turn.
Yeah.
Dagger,
that's going to be a tough card to use effectively.
Yeah. The Fiery War Axe is looking like it may come out. Kisstafer is thinking about it.
He's going to go ahead, I think, and equip this and just hold on to it, because nobody's really running oozes at this time in the meta, so he doesn't really have to fear the ooze on an unused Fiery War Axe.
Yeah, the beginning of this game is looking like a gentleman's match. Both players just equipping their weapons and just going, okay, your turn.
Now he's going to go ahead and just feed this damage or this Harvest Golem to the Fiery War Axe, knowing that he's got to get something out there so that these Fiery War Axe charges get used up.
Yeah. Now this is a tough situation being that you don't want the Acolyte of Pain to draw more than one card if you can help it. But
unfortunately, there's not really a way to avoid that.
Right.
Backstab will only do the 2 damage.
I'd use the Eviscerate, but that seems just like a... It's not... Acolyte Pain is
It
not,
feels bad.
Yeah, it feels bad. You got a card that can do 4 damage and you waste it on a 1/3.
Yeah, but I think he's kind of... unfortunately for him, I think he's kind of stuck. I think what you want to do here is you want a Novice. Hopefully you pull a Deadly Poison. And if you do, you can use that and kill the Acolyte.
Yeah, and if you don't, then you opt for Eviscerate.
I think you just Eviscerate, yeah. I think apDrop knows this. I think he just hates it. It feels like so much anti-value. But there's really not a lot else you can do about that. Oh my god, he got the Deadly Poison.
Wow.
Hello.
That's exactly what he wanted to happen.
So that was a dream draw right there for apDrop, and that's... If that's the way this game goes for apDrop, then things are looking up.
Kisstafer gets his Gore Howl off of that card draw, and then pulls a second Fiery War Axe. Gonna go ahead and Enrage off that damaged Golem. Fiery War Axe off the Novice, and then he could even armor up and pull out his second Fiery War Axe, which is exactly what he's gonna do.
Yeah, so he's gonna go ahead and say, "That's cool. You got rid of my my Acolyte there. That's fine, but I still got the Fiery War Axe. I still got plenty of stuff to remove your creatures. Not a problem."
Pulls another Backstab. So he's sitting on top of 2 Backstabs that he honestly is probably not gonna have a use for.
This is kind of an interesting turn here because I think the ideal situation... Okay, so he's actually going to go for the Sylvanas. I think I would have opted for the Azure Drake here because the Sylvanas is actually not likely to steal anything.
Yeah.
You can Azure Drake, you can attack his Azure Drake, and then you can use Inner Rage to finish it off. But it looks like... I mean, either way you do it, I think that's the play, is to attack with the Fiery War Axe and finish it off with the Inner Rage. But he's just contemplating which one to play. Looks like he's opting for the Sylvanas, but he's not sure.
He can't decide.
Now, the reason that I would go for Azure Drake here is just, again, the Sylvanas is not likely to steal anything. And not only that, the Azure Drake is going to draw you another card, continuing to cycle through your deck and getting you ready for that OTK.
Absolutely, yeah. I would absolutely go for the Azure Drake in this turn. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. He's already got one piece of his OTK with the Gore Howl, so he's just looking for charge in Alexstrasza, and he's got it. And the fact that the Azure Drake that's currently on board is basically a non-issue because he can kill it so easily just seems to me like this is just the right play. But, you know, he's going to go through all the options here. And he's just going to think about it for a little while. He can also save a charge on his axe because he can also he can Inner Rage, Coin, Execute. However, I don't think that's necessarily what he wants to do because that's basically 3 cards to kill.
I have no time for games.
3 if you count the coin.
Yeah.
So he opts for the Sylvanas.
Now, since he played this, he may just not attack this Drake. He may just leave this Drake and not do anything else. This might be the end of his turn. I think now he's just figuring out, like, is there any way I steal something with this Sylvanas? I don't think there is, sir, because he can just run the Drake in. He can actually just backstab Sylvanas.
And then run the Drake in. It doesn't even take the 5 damage.
Yeah. Exactly. He doesn't have to face tank the rest of it.
This is not going to go well for poor Kisstafer.
Okay, he's going to go ahead and get rid of it. I think that's the correct play. You really need to get rid of this thing. You can't decide, though. He's
This is a really tough place to be in. He decides to
pass
the
it's
turn,
not good.
Which is I don't think is the right play here. Oh, Tink
there you go,
Master.
Tink Master.
It's so many answers for that Sylvanas.
And now he can backstab, attack, and get rid of the 5/5 without losing any of his creatures. So again, another reason why I love Tink Master so much is because Tink Master just kind of tends to always find a target that is better than a 5/5. So even if you get the 5/5, you know, in that situation, basically Tink Master was a silence.
Absolutely. He even had the chance of getting a 1/1, which would have, much like the Deathwing, just been painful.
Yeah. So here's an interesting scenario where he can play the Pyro. Then he could... Okay, so he's not going to do that. That's interesting.
I was thinking about it.
So what I would be looking at here is I would play the Pyro, I would Inner Rage the 2/2, and then I would execute the now damaged Azure Drake, and then go ahead and hit the Blood Knight with my axe. he's not opting to do that.
So he's
doing it in a reverse order. He's actually going to take the Pyromancer out second, which means that the Inner Rage will do 2 damage, so he can use the Inner Rage on the 3/3, which will straight up kill it.
Okay.
You got the Pyromancer out. You might as well check that on the 3/3. Because then you can attack the 4/4, which will then be a 4/3. This will be almost a full board clear.
Yeah, no, you should put that on the Blood Knight.
Yeah, because that will kill the Blood Knight. It does 2 damage and then 1 more damage with the Pyromancer. Then he can kill that, which will then leave basically a 2/1 on the board.
Of course, what is also going on here is that Kisstafer is 1 game away from being out of this tournament.
Yeah.
So maybe overthinking.
No, he's really going to have to think about all his moves here. So, see, that's the thing. So now he's left with still the Azure Drake on board, where he could have had that cleared if he had axed that instead of the Tinkmaster.
So still got a 4/3 on the board. He can drop another Azure Drake and continue cycling through the deck. The Argent Commander will could get rid of either of these minions that Kisstafer has on the board.
The problem here, though, is that I think actually the correct play is just Azure Drake face tank the 3/1 with your dagger, because if you play the Argent Commander, you cannot dagger in the same turn, so you're going to leave one of those creatures up anyway.
Right.
I think I'd go for the double spell power here. See what you get with your draw.
You get the Dark Iron Dwarf, which you cannot play this turn.
Yeah. Yeah, so you dagger up, you kill the Pyromancer, and then you just do 4 damage to the face. No problem. Getting the opponent a little bit lower, and that's exactly what apDrop decides to do. So I think that was the correct play there. Oh, cleave. A 3 damage cleave here.
That's pretty nice. And
pretty saucy.
Sets him up for he could use the axe to get rid of the remaining Azure Drake, or
he can save the axe and use one of his executes here.
That's true.
He's going to go ahead and do. And he did the correct order there by playing Twilight Drake first, making sure that he played it while he had more cards in his hand. So the Twilight Drake is essentially a Chillwind Yeti there.
Yeah, it's a common mistake to drop your Twilight Drake after you've played cards.
So I think we're going to see an Argent Commander face tank the 4/5 Eviscerate combo here, leaving yeah, I think that's correct. He might also backstab Eviscerate, but that's 2 cards getting rid of 1 creature, which is always never feels good. You don't want to do that if you can avoid it. And he can avoid it here, so you might as well. Against this deck, being at 17 health, like I'll just point this out. Against this Warrior deck, being at 17 health is as good as being at 30. You know that this Warrior deck is kind of looking for that big OTK at one point, just trying to manage the board. So it's not that terrible to continue to face take some damage here.
Right, it's the exact opposite of playing against a Pyroblast Mage, where you want to conserve every hit point you possibly can.
So he is going to go ahead and do that. I guess he is a little bit worried about getting a little too low. Okay, so that does make sense, because there is also the fact that if he gets really low, there is also just a Gorehowl. He knows that a Gorehowl is just in there on its own. So a Gorehowl will just own his face, basically. So I'm going to try to keep his life health, or his life total a little higher.
Gets another Acolyte of Pain, which isn't the most exciting thing to get on turn 8.
Yeah, this is actually a little bit tough for him, because he has to play the Acolyte, and then he has to go ahead and swing into a 4/2. He will be able to armor up, though. Oh, and he's saying well played, because I think he's assuming that he's going to get killed right here. He knows that in the past he's died with about this amount of health.
Right, but he actually, apDrop does not have lethal this turn.
No, he does not. But he does have Sylvanas plus Dark Iron Dwarf, which is, that is very powerful.
Yes, it is. I keep forgetting that Dark Iron Dwarf is the old version where that +2 attack stays until the minion dies.
So the beautiful thing here for Kisstafer is he does have that execute, so he's able to go ahead and just swing in, execute. Now he can go ahead and play his Cairn. He drew a card with the Acolyte and got the 1 damage on. And Execute's a very powerful card in this Warrior deck, because you only have to get 1 damage on a creature and it's dead.
Indeed. I'm getting a bit of a stacking bug there. It looks like
God,
Black Knight was pulled and is kind of stuck behind Leroy Jenkins.
It may be unplayable. Okay, so I think actually AP might have lethal right now. He's trying to figure it out because he can do 6. He could do 8 plus. No, he's got 1 short, I believe. Yeah, so he's 1 short. So he's actually going to opt instead.
Just going to drop the
just do some damage and set himself up for lethal on the next time.
Yep.
Yeah, he's going to have to draw here because he knows he's in dire straits.
And what does he draw? A ball.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's
okay. You need to do this. I think you need to up
be.
your chances though by killing a creature. There. That's okay. So that's what he's doing.
Let's see.
So there's actually a
bug. Oh, that's not good.
That is unfortunate.
That is
However,
game.
he does get the second version of Karen back.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because apDrop has lethal on board.
Well, he goes ahead and DMs it a little by playing an unnecessary card. All right, well, there you go. apDrop wins.
Yep, indeed. Well, sorry, Kisstafer played real well, but at least he has chicken. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the first match between Savages and... Oh, no, sorry. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Between apDrop and Kisstafer, going almost to the final game, but stopping just short with Kisstafer losing to apDrop on game 6. So Kisstafer is now out of the Angry Chicken Invitational, and apDrop moves on to the finals. That rogue deck just really shining in those last 3 games.
Yeah, he was the one who was in dire straits down 2-1 to a very powerful Warlock deck. Pulled out that rogue deck and did not lose a game with it. So that's going to boost his confidence going into the finals, which will either be against Koyuki or Savages, depending on who wins their match. And you got to feel really good when you have that kind of trump card in your pocket there, where you can just kind of pull that rogue deck out and say, "Here, deal with this." Really great games. There was a lot of big moments in there. There was the Deathwing getting Tink Mastered into a 1-1. There was, apDrop finding really, really tricky lethal with his control lock in that first game. And then there was, of course, the Leroy plus the Cold Bloods plus the Dark Iron Dwarfs, plus all the damage that he can find there to finish opponents off. So
yeah, my favorite play there, I mean, hands down, was the Tink Master on the Deathwing.
Yeah,
into a 1-1 squirrel. That was definitely the highlight of apDrop versus Kisstafer.
Yeah, it was impressive. The top decking skills of apDrop was very impressive there, and of course the coin flipping skills were also very impressive. So, really, really good way to start off the Angry Chicken Invitational here with some great matches. And I gotta give Kisstafer a lot of credit. He did play very well. There were maybe 1 or 2 plays that I might have disagreed with, but that's the most that I could have seen. And that's exactly what I expected out of these players, is that they were going to play their decks to the best of their abilities, which their abilities are very good. So they really didn't miss a lot of things. They both played exceptionally well, and I think we're going to see nothing but that style of play from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely.